Mary McLeod Bethune, 1875 to 1955. She was an educational thinker who was an educator, a motivator, and activist. Enter to learn, depart to serve. Some of her educational ideas included she wanted to teach the African American female ways to better educate herself, to have a better home and a future by helping them to move beyond oppression and degrading conditions of servitude towards a more spiritual, economic, and educational liberty. She also liberal arts. She felt that liberal arts was the cornerstone and the foundation for all college curriculums, and that education should equip the individual with brain tools and an attitude of protest that would change the environment for one more worthy. And third, she dreamed, one of her, another idea was dreams of developing an institution of higher learning that could produce scientists, lawyers, architects, physicians, and the list just goes on and on and on. Now, a little bit about Miss Bethune. She was the 15th of 17 children born to former slave parents in Maysville, South Carolina. And she devoted her life to ensure the right, to education and to the freedom of black Americans. And she was the first person in her family to read. And she took that knowledge and she took it back to her family to help educate them as well. And when she was a mere 20 years old, she became a teacher and she decided to dedicate her life to educating young children. Now, in 1904, she opened the first school for African American girls called Daytona Educational and Industrial Training School. And this school is still in existence today, and it's known as Bethune-Cookman College in Daytona Beach, Florida, and is one of the HBCUs, or historically black colleges and universities. And she passed away in 1955, and she left a great legacy, of all that she had accomplished over all of those years. And in 1985, she was honored with a postage stamp bearing her image, as well as a statue in one of the parks in Washington, D.C. And this was all done in honor because she was such a valuable asset to learning and to the educational field. Now, some of the impacts that she left upon us include she demonstrated her whole person philosophy of Christian education when she opened again the first one of the first schools for African American girls in 1904. She also fought for and devoted her life to ensuring the rights to educate and freedom from discrimination for black Americans and rights for women. She was a very big activist, always constantly fighting for women's rights. She was an educator who opposed segregation and inequality that faced blacks. She also opened a high school. She also open a hospital. She was always educating. That was her love. She always was out there educating. And her desire was to ignite a passion for education, religion, and school advancement among the black population. A couple of her famous quotes would include, she said that from the first I made my learning, what little it was, useful every way I could, and as an inspiration, nothing is impossible. And she also said that faith is the first factor in a life devoted to service. Without it, nothing is impossible, but with it, everything is possible. Now, she was just, like I said, she was very inspirational. She had many ideas. She not only worked with education, she also worked with Eleanor Roosevelt. She was not a politician, but she did many, many things. So I'm going to close with saying one of her most famous quotes, and that quote came from her last will and testament from Ebony magazine, and she said that I leave you a thirst for education. Knowledge is the prime need of the hour. If I have a legacy to leave my people, it is my philosophy of living and serving. And this is just a brief overview of the life of Mary McLeod Bethune and all the wonderfulness that she devoted to education and of educating not only the African American, but just education in general. Again, Mary McLeod Bethune, educational thinker.